like that. I wonder if it could be called a crest also. Do I have it anywhere on there? Arch, superciliary arch. Obvious that if you get superciliary, you're doing good. All right, so, and what's this bone? It's going right here. Maxilla. We haven't really talked about it too much. The upper jaw is the maxilla. And then this guy, what's that?
Zygomatic.
Zygomatic bone. So one Christmas, we were home in Cincinnati. We were getting ready to drive back to Baltimore. Ice out there on the backyard, and then go out, and I'm rushing around and running from the garage into the house. I slipped on the ice, and I hit this cheekbone on the corner of a concrete step.
Wow.
And I got something to show for it. Yes.
What exactly is the superciliary arch?
Just feel that.
Like the eye?
Feel above the. Just rub the bone. Feel that lump of bone there. That's a superciliary arch, and it is sort of in an arch.
Like your eyebrow bone?
Yeah, like an eyebrow bone. That would be a good down in the hood. That's what they call it. All right. So you should have seen. So I fractured my zygomatic bone. Okay.
How painful is that?
Oh, painful. But thank goodness it was there,
Yeah.
right? Because it's very strong, and it even took punishment from a concrete corner of a concrete step as I was sliding and falling. You should have seen the color of my eye. Oh my God, the eye was bright red and it's purple, and oh, it was really a mess. I got stitches right there. I still got a little scar. All right.
How old were you?
I was a graduate student. I was probably.
So you were like rounded.
No, but I was foolish. I was running on ice.
We all get bored sometimes.
I should have been carrying scissors too.
Oh gosh.
All right. So I do want you to hear this. By the way, I've developed a habit in my first year class to put capital L-E-A-R-N when I want you to learn something. Now really the whole thing should be capital learn all across this whole thing. But there are some features that I want to emphasize. I don't want you to learn. Bones that form the ridge and also in the back of the eye, the majority of the rear wall of the eye. Anybody know what bone that is? We talked about it the other day. Sphenoid. Sphenoid. So the four major bones. Now there's some other. There's the lacrimal and the ethmoid. I mean, there's a lot of bones. But I may ask you to draw the rim of the orbit and label the bones. Not really that difficult.
So if you ask us to
Put a
draw, do you
big
want us to just
star on
have
it.
sphenoid, or do you want us to put ethmoid and lacrimal?
If I say the rim of the orbit, you do not have to put in sphenoid.
Okay.
But I would like you to know that's the one that's at the rear.
Okay.
By the way, sphenoid is very thin. This doesn't have any of the strength of these other. These are the.
No. So I was thinking about the bone that you showed us around in class that you walked around. That's not. That's something else.
Ethmoid.
Ethmoid.
Yeah, that
They
was the
look like a piece
ethmoid.
of
Yeah.
Spongy.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, ethmoid.
Spongy
there
whatever.
is. Well, there's a tiny bit of ethmoid right in here. And while we got this up here, I did mention before, there's a bone just to the medial side of the eye that drains tears. What's the word stand for tears?
Lacrimal.
And so lacrimal bones are the ones. There's a fabulous wine that's grown on the, here I go again, sides of the Mount Vesuvius. called Lacrima Christi. What's that mean?
So
Tears
it's
of
the
Christ. What a poetic name for a wine. Lacrima Christi.
Is it?
And a lacrimator. They used a lot of lacrimators in Charlotte, North Carolina last night, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh,
They produced a lot of them, yeah.
yeah.
What's a lacrimator?
Something that causes
Tear
tears.
gas.
Yeah.
Oh, goosebumps again. Making me mad. Okay. Palatine. All right.
Yep. It's like if you don't have a broad
Let's get
sense of the
inside
world, you
somebody's
won't
mouth.
get his jokes.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, but the ones he just talked about are like the important
We're looking
ones.
up. That's the hard palate. This is the maxillary bone, or maxilla. The front half, the anterior half of the hard palate is formed by the maxilla. And there are two maxillary bones that come together to form the whole right and left. Behind it are some cute little bones that form the palate and are called palatine. And these two bones come together, and you can feel them. Take your tongue on it. And the hard palate stops, and then it gets soft palate. And here,
Shouldn't do that when you have gum in your mouth.
soft palate. Feel it with your tongue if your tongue is acrobatic enough. Go down.
Yeah.
So palatine bones. They also form, by the way, part of the wall of the lateral walls of the nasal cavity. Palatine, lateral, nasal. I'll show you here, nasal. You can see them. Here are the nasal bones right here. So here's the maxilla. By the way, the maxilla has a very large, what's that cavity, a chamber called?
Sinus?
Sinus. Maxillary sinus. And it's a favorite one for bacteria to grow in. And your cheeks will just ache. And I did threaten to tell you about bones with sinuses. Do I have a, I think maybe in your book there is a picture.
Page 224.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, 224, it's worth looking at. And you will recognize those spots if you get sinus infections. And I mentioned before, you go to bed feeling okay, you wake up in the morning feeling like you were in a boxing match. Your whole face hurts. All right, so,
Here.
sinuses. Frontal. Ethmoid.
That's a good picture. That's a good picture to show you.
Sphenoid. Maxilla.
Alright,
And I'll be perfectly honest, in my notes it calls this the maxillary bone. I think it's good enough to call it the maxilla, but maybe some people call it maxillary. Yeah.
It says maxilla in the book.
Okay, that's what I prefer. So what do these four bones have in common? They all have chambers.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of these sinuses? There are two purposes. I didn't mention them in passing, but I'm going to.
Resonance?
Resonance. And you know, if your sinuses are all from, okay, you don't have this resonant. And what's the other purpose? Lightens the skull. You don't need all that. That doesn't need to be packed with bone. They're all lined with mucous membrane. And that mucus naturally is supposed to flow. And with a sinus infection, it'll drain into the nasal cavity. And what do they call that back there when it drains down?
Post-nasal drip.
Post-nasal drip. That's a sign of something's going on probably in your sinuses.
So wouldn't another purpose of the sinuses really be for the drainage system?
No, the drainage system keeps them clean, but that's not the purpose. I mean, they're not. They only
That's
drain
just
themselves.
an added bonus.
Yeah, if you didn't,
Yeah.
and boy, they get stopped up, and you're dead meat. That's when you get the sinus headaches. They get stopped up and filled up, and you're miserable. All right. We need to talk briefly about the conchi. And I warn you, this is one of my favorite cross sections because it looks so strange compared to what you're used to. This is a cross section through the nasal cavity. Okay. So here's the maxilla. What's that? Perpendicular plate, or the septum, nasal septum. Now, watch this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Isn't that interesting? Do you find that interesting?
Looks like a tree.
Why does it have that shape?
Surface area.
Increased surface area. Now, so this is all air, and these are bones. Okay? And superior, middle, and inferior nasal concha. And I know you're eager to know a little bit more about the shape of the ethmoid bone because it's a major part here. Here's the ethmoid bone. Ethmoid. By the way, what are these little holes?
Oh.
Cribriform plate. This is a very intimate bone that is very important function, and you hardly even know about it. Unless sometimes the perpendicular plate is like this. What do they call that? Deviated septum. Don't want that. People with that have terrible times breathing. They probably snore like a son of a gun. Okay? So we don't want that. Concha means shell. And by the way, there is one bone in the skull called the turbinate. Turbinate. Do I have it right here?
Nope, can't do it.
Oh well. You know, it's the inferior nasal concha. That's another name, and that's the one I prefer. But somebody thought they liked turbinate. Anyway, it's all lined with mucous membrane. And when we talk about the respiratory tract,
Did you write what plate it is?
The
what do you think the
crystal
purpose of
plate?
that richly
Those little
vascularized
holes?
mucous membrane that lines the entire nasal cavity? What are some purposes of that? What's that? Mucus traps it. A number of things. If I say air conditioning, yes, air conditioning means, in a general sense, when it's 0 degrees outside, if you breathe in through your mouth, your lungs say, ow, don't do that.
Mhm.
They say breathe what? Through your nose. Why?
Warm
Your
it.
nose does what? Warms it up. Okay. Likewise, when your nose is stopped up and you got a cold in the winter and you breathe through your mouth, what happens to your throat? Dries out like crazy. Miserable. So, air conditioning means to warm it up and moisturize it, to condition the air. Now, it also is an important filter. Particulate matter sticks to this mucus. And this is one of those things I shouldn't admit, But if I'm out there cleaning out the chicken house and I never remember to take a mask with me. So then I come back into the house and I blow my nose. You probably know the rest of that story.
Yeah, we do.
It's not exactly clear white stuff.
Lots of debris.
Okay, finally, when you have a cold and your nasal chamber is irritated and swollen, what happens to these little tiny spaces? And you can't breathe through your nose. All right, and finally, richly vascularized. What does that mean?
It's
Lots of
blood
blood.
vessels.
You ever have experience with that? Oh yeah.
Bloody nose.
Bloody nose, and that can come from either getting punched or super dry, and suddenly this blood fountain come out. All right.
I used to get those when I would first visit my dad out in Nevada. I'd get nosebleeds the first day I would be out there. Yeah, it's like going from 99% humidity down to 13%. It's interesting.
Ethmoid bone. Okay. And in your, by the way, there's some great pictures of the nasal cavity on page 224, but the ethmoid bone itself is shown on page. My chalk. Where is it? Ah, on page 218. All right. Now, we have already covered the mandible in lab, and I'm not going to go over that again, but I will just remind. Now I'm going to. All right, you tell me. What's this branch called?
Ramus.
Ramus. What's this little knuckle thing here?
Condyle.
Condyle. What condyle?
Mandibular condyle.
What's its purpose? What does it articulate with?
Your skull? Something notch.
Work it out.
It was a
The temporal.
The temple bump. The temple. And what feature of the temple?
something notch. No, wait.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. Fossa. What fossa? Mandibular fossa. I mean, you might otherwise say, what do you say in mandible? Because it's there on the temple. Because it's because. Oh, mandibular fossa. Because it articulates with the mandible. And by the way, what is this called on the temple? Zygomatic
Process.
process. You're getting it. And what's this crown-like thing here? Coronoid process. And what's this notch called?
Mandibular notch.
Mandibular notch.
Page 221 in the book, guys.
Thank you. 221. And this is called the body. Mandible, lower jaw. Okay, all right. Let's go to now. This is all part of. There are two broad divisions of all the bones. Remember what those two divisions are? We're talking on one part right now with the skull. So, axial, appendicular. Okay. We're going to talk some more about axial. I don't think I'm going to get. I definitely will not get done with it today, but it's pretty interesting in and of itself.
Don't you have a flight to catch?
Not today. Tomorrow, boy.
Just trying to slow you down here, buddy. Trying to slow you down.
All right.
You're at light speed today.
I've hardly covered anything. I was gonna get all the way down to your coccyx.
Let's talk about that.
We will.
What's the word for knuckle again?
But
Condyle.
that's the last thing we talk about.
Pun intended. Boom, boom.
No, wait a minute. No,
He's so funny.
So, we are going to learn, and one of these days, you are going to draw a generalized vertebra. And it's easier than what you might think. I probably will not ask this on the test on Tuesday because we haven't really had a chance to digest it. We haven't studied it in the lab yet, but we're gonna start learning it now. We're gonna draw this baby here, and we're gonna learn all of these features. Look at all those features, all on one vertebra. By the way, what kind of bone is the vertebra? Irregular, very much so. All right, so you're going to need at least a half a page to draw this baby. I may ask you general questions, but I'm not going to have you draw on the test. Something I will have you draw.
10:25. Got 4
Yeah, I
minutes.
know, I'm trying to slow him down, but it's not working.
Yeah, like, no, please don't give
So
me
this
more
is
before
a-
this test. Oh God. Round what? Oh,
General
general.
vertebra.
Oh, vertebra.
And we're going to start
With a hole.
We're going to start with the vertebral foramen.
Yes.
What's a foramen?
A hole.
The whole vertebral column is supported by some very strong bones. Called the centrum.
What?
Centrum.
Oh.
Or the body. What do they call it here? They call it the body? I don't know.
Yep.
You can see them here. These are all the centra. And that stacked on one on another is what is the main support for the trunk, the ribs, the head. By the way, as we will find out, we have lumbar vertebrae. What are these vertebrae that have ribs attached?
Thoracic.
We have
Cervical.
Okay. Guess which the largest, strongest vertebrae are? Lumbar. What are the weakest, most delicate?
Cervical.
And it makes sense. As you go up, it gets lighter and lighter. Now, transverse process. Transverse process.
I have some really good pictures of this kind of stuff at home in my old biology notes. But color coded.
I have a bunch of like coloring sheets of this from high school.
And
I got an
muscles
AP
between
coloring book.
allow
It
to
helps.
tilt
Oh,
one way or
yeah.
the other. You do this. The muscles between the transverse processes are contracting one side or the other. There is a flat layer called the lamina. And then what gives the spine its name, spinous process. Okay. Now, besides the centrum stacked on one another, there are articular facets. Articulars, those are pieces that join together, and these articular facets are facet means face. Don't know how to say that. Now, this entire from here,
Read it.
Bottom it's centrum.
Centrum. Okay.
there is called the
It's just
neural
central.
I've always
arch.
known it just to be body. That's why I was like, I'm not gonna write that down.
Neural arch. So let's see. Oh yeah, pedestal. See this little pedestal. Little means little foot.
I know, right?
P-E-D-I-C.
conversations we'd have. Yeah, I would. They should, that Ancient Alien show,
Well,
we make him go on it.